We are in the second parak on the 8th Mishnah. Mishnah Chet, page 552 in the Article Siddur. So we're still working through Hillel. Hu haya omer, so he used to say, Marbe Vasar, Marbe Rima. What are you living for? Right? What are you trying to get out of your life? Like if you ask most people to sit down and say, what do I want out of life? And it's, I want luxury, and I want, right? I want money and servants and maids and cars and fine foods, and I want to be, right? It's interesting that, the Greeks had a philosophical system, people called the Epicureans, right? You still see a person today who loves fine dining and fine food and indulgence, right? Is an Epicurean, right? An epicure. So what do we use as our word for an intellectual heretic, a total argumentative doubter, is an Epicurus, right? Which is an Epicurean. So I remember years ago, my first Rav, and we're talking about college and learning and outside society, and I said, I'm not afraid of college. I'm not afraid of anything the outside world has to say. You want to send me Christian missionaries, send me Christian missionaries, I'll argue with them. I have no intellectual doubts, and I'm going to instill in my kids, I wasn't even married yet, but I'll instill in my kids such an intellectual and philosophical handle on the genius of Torah that they'll be immune to the arguments of Epicurus, right? And he said, you don't understand the power of an Epicurus, right? Why do kids leave? Kids don't leave because they heard a brilliant philosophical construct on cosmology, on the nature of physics. That's not why they leave. They leave because of pretty girls, right? They leave because they want to party. They leave because they want to be Epicureans. It says, ultimately, the reason we call it Epicurus is to hint at and remind you that ultimately the fight is not an intellectual fight. It's a fight between the desire for Marbe Basar and the fight for Marbe Torah. If we totally fail to teach them anything, if we leave our kids like we saw in the preceding Mishnah, they all grow up as Am Haratzi, and they have no ability to think and no ability to argue, and you never teach them ethics, and you never teach them, right? Don't teach them Pirkei Avos, you just teach them, how it is that you touch up a certain... So then, the first time someone gives them an intellectual argument, they're lost, because they hear a contradiction, they think Torah is stupid, and they run away. But the problem, right, but so we do make a mistake. But as a general concept, here's the struggle, Hillel says. It says, Marbe Vasar, Marbe Rima. The more meat, the more worms. You spend your whole life struggling, right? I want to be an epicure. I want to eat the fanciest stuff and the most stuff, and I want to indulge myself, whatever. It's a mnemonic device for physical pleasure. I want all the physical pleasure I can cram into a day. He says, if all you do is feed meat, all you're doing is making more meat for the worms to eat. Right? We're going to see in the third parak, the competing Mishnah that says, right, know where you came from, know where you're going. Where are you going? You're going to a place, right, of worms and maggots who are going to eat you in the grave. If you think that your life is about fast cars and fancy food, all you're doing is you're feeding a dead, rotting bag of meat. That's all you got. All right. So I'm not going to push for Marbe Basar. But, right, Marbe Nechasim, I can get rich. I can have a lot of stuff. Marbe Nechasim, Marbe Da'aga. The more stuff, the more worries. I just got, so I like to ride. I'm an amateur, a cyclist a little bit. So I got my boys' bikes. Not phenomenal bikes, but nice enough bikes that they can ride with me. We just got them. They haven't even been fully set up and tightened down. They've never ridden them yet. So I put them stored, away in the garage, right? I went down this afternoon to get something, and one of the bikes is gone. Stolen. Had it for 2 days. I had it for 2 days! My kid's never even ridden it. And right? Turns out that my kid wanted to show it off to his grandmother, so he brought it into the house, and it was in the living room hiding behind the piano, and I didn't know it. But here I am. I'm much better off because I have more bikes, right? More stuff. And it's like, well, no, I have a whole other thing to have to worry about and put an alarm on or a lock on or right? And it ruined my whole afternoon thinking that, my thing had been stolen. If I didn't have it, right, I was no worse off than I was a week ago. But I felt miserable. Right? People spend their whole lives trying to gather stuff, but just the accumulation of stuff Now you've got to figure out, how do you manage your stuff? How do you store your stuff? How do you insure your stuff? How do you track your stuff? Your whole life, you can have your whole life be about stuff. There's plenty of people that everything in their life, it's like they no longer have any freedom because their life is earning enough money to pay the mortgage on the stuff and decorating the stuff and protecting the stuff, and it all becomes about stuff. He says stuff is not necessarily, again, he's not saying you can't have any boss, he doesn't say you can't eat, he doesn't say you can't have wealth, but it's not an unadulterated bracha. It's not completely a blessing. Marbe noshim, marbe kashafim. Right? The more wives, the more witchcraft. Right? The more. So, fortunately, the rabbis in their brilliance said we're only allowed to have one wife. So we don't have that. But you don't want to create. Right? You think it's wonderful. I'm going to have more wives. I have all my sister wives living in my house, and it's just going to be a paradise with a harem. And all you've done is you create. Why does it say don't have two sisters marry the same husband? Either say don't have two women marry the same husband, or let them. It doesn't, right? Why two sisters can't have the same husband? It says because there's a recognition that two wives are going to come to hate each other and be rivals to each other and wish ill on each other. And it becomes a zero-sum game. That for you to have the benefit of a husband tonight means I don't. And any love that pours on you doesn't pour on me. And it becomes, you create a rivalry and a level of hatred. Now, it's bad enough that it's between two women, but it says sisters. It says they have a pre-existing relationship in life that is way, way more important than whatever pleasure you're going to get by having one or the other as your wife. That you do not have the right to step on that connection. There's an existing soul-to-soul connection, a relationship that exists between sisters, that for you to destroy for your pleasure is destructive and evil. Two sisters should not marry a guy. You're going to destroy that sisterly love and connection find someone else. So that same way, you take that same rivalry and move it into the house. So it's not sisters, right? So they didn't have any, but that's the destruction you're bringing into your home. You think it's going to all be party and it's all your lewdness, your model of physical lewdness, but all you're doing is you're bringing destruction on souls and you're bringing in witchcraft. I mean, it's a mnemonic. Marbe shafachot, marbe zima. Right, the more maid servants, the more lewdness. If you have your house full of single girls, you're just going to have physical corruption. I'm not even going to get into that one. Right? Marbe avadi, marbe gozel. So I'm going to have servants, I have workers. The more workers, the more thievery. The more they're stealing from you, the more they're cheating each other. This is all of these physical pleasures. Which ones in some ways don't even matter. It's just that we think that the goal is to create all this physical indulgence. And he says it has a cost. Right? There's a spiritual, moral cost to your life being focused on indulgence. But marbe Torah, marbe chayim. The more Torah is life. Torah is instructions for living. Torah, we saw in the first parak, is you opening yourself up to the world to have an understanding of who you are and what your obligations are and what life's about. It says marbe Torah, marbe chayim. Marbe yeshiva, more learning, marbe chachma. Right, that's something you can get a taste of. You sit down and learn, marbe yeshiva, marbe chayim. Marbe yeshiva, marbe chachma. That's where wisdom comes from. Is the time spent sitting and learning. Right? Marbe etza, marbe tavuna. Ask for advice. Right? Find someone who can. This is not in the realm of Torah scholarship. This is in the realm of life. Right? Find someone who can give you advice. Have a friend. Have a mentor. Right? The more you have someone, right, looking over your shoulder and saying, "Babe, here's what you need to do. Here's where you're strong. Here's where you're weak." Right? Get guidance. Right? That's where understanding comes from. Understanding doesn't arise, organically out of your own brain. Right? Understanding of the world comes from the give and take of sitting with a mentor and you explaining, here's what I'm working on. Right? Eitzah. Right? So he goes through and he lays out these two things. What do you want out of your life? Do you want chachma? Do you want tavuna? You want wisdom? You want understanding? Or you want life? So here's how you get them. Most people settle for this fake stuff, right? And again, I know I suffer from it too. I wake up in the morning, a good chunk of my life is figuring out how I'm going to go get more stuff and more food and more. But after a while, you know what? Like, how much stuff can you eat? Right? What do I need? Marbe tzedakah, marbe shalom. Right? The more that you tzedakah, we talked about, is this idea that you look at the needs of someone else and you try to fix them. Right? I see where you're hurting and I try to help you. Right? That's shalom. I'm fixing you up. Right? You need money, you need food, you need time. What do you need from me? Right? That's what I want. I want peace in the world. Right? Ohev shalom, rodeh shalom, right? Tzedakah. Reach out. Kana shem tov, kana l'atzmo. If you acquire money, and you acquire enough of it, I do life insurance and estate planning. And, at a certain point in life, once you've accumulated more than you can basically spend on a couple of cars and some food and a vacation, it's all about how do I make sure that everything I've collected goes to my grandkids and not to the tax man. But everything you collect, at a certain point, you can only eat so much, and everything else you're doing, someone else is going to get it. Whether it's your ungrateful grandkid who's going to be destroyed by it, right? Or whether it's the tax man or the government or, right? I mean, the wealthy of Greece, they're gone. The wealthy of Germany, they're gone. Like, none of that stuff lasted. It gets eaten alive. The only thing that you have that's always yours is your good name. We go down these names and you hear of Rabban Gamliel. And you know what? There's no trace of his gold. Right? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was the richest guy in the Jewish world. There's no trace of his wealth. But he certainly has his name. Right? The Rambam and the Rashbam and Rashi and all, what are they? It's their names. Even in the secular world, right? George Washington, he's the father of the country. Right? It's their name. The fact you build a good name, that's yours forever. That's significant. Kana lo divrei Torah, and a person who acquires words of Torah, kana lo chayil olam haba. And ultimately, that's the most permanent thing. If you can acquire, right, that's not just reflecting how you survive in this world, but that's changing the very nature of who you are. If you can acquire Torah, right, you can change the spiritual component of yourself, change your soul, and that lasts forever. So that's our mission.